Welcome to tonight's virtual meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willem clan of the Boonwurrung. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present, and we acknowledge and uphold their traditional relationship to this land. Tonight's meeting is being held via the Webex platform and streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Whilst we have planned for this online meeting, there always remains a risk of technical issues arising that are beyond our control. If we experience technical issues tonight, we'll adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. If the issue cannot be resolved and the meeting cannot continue, then we'll adjourn till tomorrow evening and the details will be circulated to the public as early as possible. Meeting processes have been altered via resolution of Council to hear all submissions from members of the public at the start of the meeting. Additionally, voting on all motions will be under division, where the Chair will call upon councillors individually in rotating alphabetical order to state their vote. And before commencing the agenda items, I would like to let councillors and the community know that we have an item of urgent business that relates to a planning matter at 134 to 142 Ferrars Street, South Melbourne, for consideration later on in tonight's agenda. And a copy of the proposed item has been distributed this afternoon via the website. So normally we would give you a bit of a notice, but we're unable to in this particular case. So let's head on into the agenda, councillors. Item 1 is apologies. And councillors, I think we're all here tonight, so there are no apologies. Item 2 is minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 1st of July 2020 have been circulated. Are there any questions relating to these minutes? No, so can I please have a motion to confirm these minutes? We have Councillor Simic to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Copsey to second. Thank you. I will now put the motion under division and call upon each councillor for your vote. First up, Councillor Brand. Councillor Brand, can't hear you, but I can see that you're saying 4. Thumbs up? Okay, we might need to check your sound there. Councillor Copsey?
4.
4. Councillor Crawford?
4.
Councillor Gross?
4.
Councillor Pearl?
In favour.
Councillor Simic?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Voss? 4. Councillor Baxter?
4.
Councillor Bond?
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. Councillor Brand, just
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, that was interesting.
All right, we'll just, that's fine.
Yes.
Item 3 is declarations of conflicts of interest. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict of interest? I note there are none. Councillor Brand, if you wouldn't mind just moving your speaker up a little bit, as we've got the breathing thing happening. Item 4 is public question time and submissions. And councillors will now hear all public questions and comments on report items from members of the public. All requests to speak were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. At the time of registering to speak, submitters were given the option to join via the Webex meeting virtually and ask their questions live during the meeting, or have an officer read their statement on their behalf. Statements submitted by members of the public will be read in summary by the Coordinator of Governance. And I note that everything has been submitted to councillors to read as well. So I now call upon, first up, Terence Glenane, who's speaking to item 7.1, which is the petition request to access St Kilda Peanut Farm Pavilion and oval lighting by dog owner groups of St Kilda. Welcome.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm assuming you've got the original petition and you have read it?
Correct.
Okay then. Well, I think I'd just like to highlight a few major points sort of in parallel with that request. Shall I start now?
Yes, please. If you could just state your name again and your suburb, please.
I'm Terence Glenane, live in St Kilda.
Keep going, thank you.
Right. I am the president of the St Kilda Dog Owners Group, and we represent a social group of dog owners who started in the peanut farm in St Kilda. We've got approximately 380 group members who regularly use the park daily, and many more are joining our group frequently, especially with the coronavirus and people buying dogs. Our group is sort of a forum for social interaction, related news, dog training. I would like to highlight a few major points in the submission. The Peanut Farm Oval is a registered dog off-leash area, and it's large enough area for dog owners to social distance in the present environment, well and truly large enough, while at the same time enabling a focal point for dog owners to group in numbers for security and safety, especially for young female members getting later in the evening. Dog owners have to exercise their dogs daily, and many dog owners have to exercise their dogs after work hours during the dark. With the new LED light over
Mr. Glenane, we seem to have lost you there. Kirsty, are you able to continue on?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely.
Thanks very much.
From where I understand, it left off at dog owners have to exercise their dogs daily, and many dog owners have to exercise their dogs after work hours during the dark. With the new LED oval lights activated, this would add greatly to personal security at night and would enable dog owners to congregate on the oval at night for security and safety. As requested, lights would not be required later than 7:30 p.m, so disturbance to neighbouring premises to the oval would be of no practical concern. Of course, during summer time, lights would not be required at all. Because of the recent lockdowns, there has been a significant increase in puppy and other dogs purchased. Many dog owners joining our dog owners group of St Kilda are first-time dog owners and need support and guidance in dog training and behaviour. Also, dog ownership responsibilities to the community are transferred through other members of the group. With Peanut Farm oval lighting not available, many dog owners are denied a safe place to meet after working hours and sunset. Council, through its resources, should encourage community groups to flourish for the benefit of wellbeing, community spirit, and making the City of Port Phillip an even more desirable place to live and work. I believe the request to have the Peanut Farm lighting made available is modest, with Council having to do little compared to the community benefits to be gained. End of statement.
Thank you very much for that. And I know sometimes we do have a bit of an issue with the internet, so thanks for taking that up on behalf of Mr. Glenane. And I will remind our speakers of the 3-minute limit, as I didn't do that earlier. I would now like to call upon Mr. David Wingate. He's speaking to 7.1 as well, the petition request to access the St Kilda Peanut Farm Pavilion and oval lighting by the dog owners group of St Kilda. Welcome, Mr. Wingate.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If you'd state your name again and the suburb, please.
Great. My name is David Wingate, and I've been in St Kilda for about 8 years now.
Terrific.
I just wanted to support the comments from Terry. So our group started in May 2019, and it's grown since March by 200 extra members. So there's a pronounced increase in the number of people seeking a social group for dog walking, and the adoptions and purchase of puppies has really increased remarkably in the last several months during the COVID time. We're an inclusive and supportive dog community, and we really feel that socialisation training of dogs is vital to have that nice, safe sort of St Kilda environment. And we support socially for the community, but also we hold dog wakes and we look after lost dogs and finding their owners, training and health tips as the members ask. And we've even hosted a Christmas party when we hired the venue off the council last year. They're all local members, and Terry, in just 4 days, got over 300 signatures from the people physically in the park to sign that they support that we get some lighting for safety and increased usage of the peanut farm of an evening. With the latest lockdown, there is also a further urgency where the shared use of the grounds, where the football players would sometimes turn the lights on when they're practicing and using part of the field, that isn't happening now with the increased lockdown. So there's no lighting any evenings for people to use a part of the park for running a dog. So the lighting is, as Terry said, about the 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. time to give us a safe ability. We have quite a large audience, and one of our questions is the facility there to put it on an automatic timer, or do we start with the key access as per the football people as a practicality question? And the access is the first point, but then is that functionality available? Really, that's I think Terry's highlighted the other key points, but just to emphasise, we do provide a good community support to first-time dog owners and the community to make sure that those dogs are well socialised and trained to be a pleasant addition to St Kilda.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr Wingate. I note that we are just receiving this petition tonight, but a councillor may take up your questions should they feel the need tonight. Thank you. Now, I'd like to call upon Georgina Solidis, please, and she is speaking to item 9.2, Multicultural Advisory Committee update, and All One Together, the anti-racism campaign. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here today as the chair of the newly formed Multicultural Advisory Committee, and the deputy chair, Mireille Kayeye, is also here and will speak shortly. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the council for establishing this important committee and providing us with this opportunity to provide an update on our work tonight. I'm speaking briefly to the full report that's already been submitted. In particular, I would like to acknowledge Councillor Oggie Simic, who has been instrumental in getting us started and providing insight and commitment. MAC was endorsed by Council last October and held its first meeting last December. We're establishing a work program under difficult circumstances, and I would like to acknowledge the work of Eva Zisk, who has provided tremendous support in positive and creative ways. Her experience means she's across the issues, which makes our work easier and more effective. The committee has members with a range of experience and expertise, which will allow it to make a meaningful contribution to council deliberations. I wish to thank all members for contributing their time and making the standpoint of important sections of our community more visible. Cultural, linguistic and religious diversity is part of the fabric of our city and has been historically. Those seeking a better life have come here for generations, and the city has welcomed new ways of doing things that have created the dynamic place we're proud to call home. My own family has links to the area that go back to the 1960s, when the area was less gentrified. While Greek remains one of the most spoken language, there are now 114 languages spoken in Port Phillip, with 1 in 3 people overseas. This makes the work of our committee increasingly pertinent. MAC has established an action plan, which we've attached to the report that you've received. This is a dynamic document framed by the Australian Standard for Welcoming Cities. Our work is in line with council policy and is also responsive to community priorities as these come to us through the extensive and diverse networks tapped by our members. I'd just like to highlight a couple of things that we're planning on to develop a multicultural communications plan, ascertain the needs of multicultural groups catering for seniors, develop and implement language across access guidelines, and provide new arrivals to Port Phillip with information about our community and specific information about employment. Despite our short existence, we have coincided with difficult ways of operating, but we've already achieved a lot. To date, we have participated in a number of consultations, including one on the Multicultural Seniors Group. Oh, I've run out of time already.
That's okay. Keep going for the moment, please. I know this is
important. Customer Charter and the Library Services. We've had working parties on Cultural Diversity Week, Refugee Week, and the draft council budget. What I'd like to skip to, because I fear I might be running out of time, is the last part where we've engaged quite dynamically with the problems that have come through the current crisis. And we've been able to do that because our networks through our membership have things which make our committee dynamic and focused. Translations, these are some of the things we've done. We've been able to translate COVID fact sheets into Russian, Polish and Hebrew. We've been linking organisations that support international students and asylum seekers through the Share the Food project. We've assisted in local food delivery services and targeting international students and people on temporary visas who are particularly vulnerable. We've been successful with several funding applications to support the digital literacy of multicultural seniors and families living in Park Towers and Emerald Hill. The committee has assisted community members to report discrimination and vilification through online reporting mechanisms because there's increasing evidence of the COVID crisis exacerbating existing racism. And it's this role that MAC can play through grassroots activity that allows the council to respond quickly in a targeted manner. We framed our practice by best practice through a range of policy documents. And what I'd like to do is, before I introduce our Deputy Chair who'll be speaking to a request related to a policy document, I'd like to finish with a request to Council to extend our term from October 2020 to May 21, which is in line with changes to the election timetable. I'd like to now hand over to Mairead.
Thank you very much, Ms. Salidas. So yes, I'll call upon Mairead Kayeye, is also speaking on to item 9.2 Multicultural Advisory Committee and the All One Together Anti-Racism Campaign. Welcome.
Thank you. I am here today as the Deputy Chair of the newly formed Multicultural Advisory Committee. Thank you for providing us with this opportunity to address you today. As mentioned by the Chair, MAC has been working on all issues that affect multicultural, refugee and asylum seeker communities in the city of Port Phillip with an intention of providing Council with advice and feedback. Today, we would like to seek Council support to join All One Together, which is a Victoria-wide anti-racism campaign. I will present the background information about this campaign and the steps Council needs to take to join the campaign. The recent Black Lives Matter movement reminds us that systemic racism is everywhere, including Australia. Research shows that Black people, Indigenous, people of colour continue to disproportionately experience systemic discrimination, including the way maternal care is provided to Black women, in the educational and employment obstacles Black youth encounter, and Black people's interactions with the justice system and police. The recent example in Victoria of the African gangs rhetoric by mainstream media is very damaging to the way people of color are perceived in the community. I come from Burundi and I am living in St. Kilda while seeking asylum. Racism has been something I often deal with at many levels. The intersectionality between being a woman, a person of color, and a refugee will determine the jobs I am allowed to do, if I ever secure an interview, the housing I can access, or the legal support I am linked to. This campaign is one of the rare opportunities for organizations to collaborate and tackle discrimination in Victoria and Australia-wide. It invites corporate activism, a strategy to promote the respect and dignity for all individuals within their own organizations and their communities, regardless of their origins, religion, and race. The All One Together campaign invites organizations to join and commit to delivering an action to address racism. Key actions involve establishing a senior-led culture of no tolerance to racism, implementing specific policies and procedures to address complaints, reviewing employment policies to detect biases in recruitment and career pathways, developing mentor and role modeling programs for new migrants, making legislation that protects all citizens against racism, including official channels for complaints outside an individual's organization, and investing in culturally responsive practices and services. By pledging their support to this campaign, Council will show publicly its ongoing commitment to challenging racism in practical ways. And Port Phillip Council has a long history of supporting multicultural communities through endorsement of campaigns that promote social cohesion. We call on the Council to consider the following actions, specifically which are suggested by the campaign organizers. Take the All One Together pledge, noting that all partners who take the pledge will be highlighted on the campaign website. Provide a statement of commitment and issue a message from the Chief Executive Officer specifying why Council supports the All One Together and defining one action Council will implement to tackle racism and discrimination. The action Council chooses to take should align with the Council plan and be fit, purpose, and readiness. By joining this campaign, Council will encourage stakeholders, businesses, organizations, and residents who may not pay attention to racism to actively implement means towards fighting against it. We look forward to a positive response that can foster strong relationships and inclusion of all sections of our multicultural city of Port Phillip. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now go to our next submitter, and I call upon Rachel from Port Melbourne. She's speaking to item 14.2, the proposed tenancy agreement, the Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi there, Bernadette. That doesn't sound good. I'm getting lots of feedback.
Lots of feedback. Okay. Have you got another device open?
Only a phone.
Okay.
Can you hear the feedback, or is it?
Yeah, I can hear the feedback. We might go to the next person and I'll get somebody to speak to you through that, if possible. So just hold on the line. Would like to call upon Annette Maloney, speaking to item 14.2, the proposed tenancy agreement of Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Welcome, Ms. Maloney.
Thanks. Hi, Bernadine. Thanks, everyone. Annette Maloney, and I'm a resident of Port Melbourne. I'm also a mother of two very sporty children, aged 16 and 11, and secretary of the Port Colts Junior Footy Club. And I've just recently stepped down as Port Melbourne Primary School Council President after 10 years as well. So I'm here to object to the City of Port Phillip granting the proposed tenancy agreement to the Sharks on the terms outlined in the council papers in item 14.2. And I think the question that I'd like all councillors to consider is, how does this exclusive tenancy benefit the local community? I've always been involved in a lot of sporting clubs around Port Melbourne, but have totally opposed any user group having exclusive use of pavilions, grounds or facilities. And, you know, I'm very familiar with the soccer club and the service they provide to the community. And by all accounts, you know, they do a great job. But my understanding is that for many years and currently, they still only cater to a very small proportion of people and children actually from our community. It's never really been a community sport club from my understanding, but rather a destination club for those players with talent to enjoy the sport at the highest levels. And, you know, that isn't a problem at all. It's actually great for our community, but expecting exclusive access to community facilities is a problem as I see it. I think from their submission and their proposal that I've read through that they are trying to invent themselves as a port-friendly local club, and I believe that to be because they are trying to secure the tenancy agreement with council. And some of the reasons I believe that is because there were some very false statements made about their relationship with Port Melbourne Primary School, which I know for certain to be untrue. I also took the liberty of consulting with Peter Martin, the school principal that's been at the school for the last 18 years, who's just recently retired, to confirm that what the soccer club was saying in the proposal was inaccurate. And I've taken his reply verbatim in my report, and I'll just read it too quickly. I know councillors have a copy, but he said, you know, I had no idea that under the existing tenancy agreement, Port Melbourne Soccer Club's required to provide for community use. Port Melbourne Soccer Club achieved this in 2018 by partnering with Port Melbourne Primary School. This is coming from the proposal that Peter's cited, and Emerald Hill Mission providing playgrounds, technical support and scholarship positions. He was the school principal at the time but was unaware of these things that were in the proposal. His statement is that the schools work very close, the statement in the proposal, is that the schools work very closely with both the Port Melbourne Netball Club and the Port Colts Junior Footy Club for many years, but we've only ever had a passing relationship with the soccer club. He suggests that council asked the head of PE, Stephen Brewer, to outline if there have been any experiences to work with the soccer club, and may also like to contact the Middle Park Soccer Club to hear about the difficulties that it facilities in Port Melbourne for junior players. And Peter goes on in regards to his suggestions to council when reviewing the lease. But given the time, I'd just like to go down to where I finished my submission. I'd like to know how council officers verified the statements made by the Sharks in their proposal, re community involvement. I believe the pavilion should be a multi-use facility and there definitely shouldn't be permanent fences. Open space is becoming more and more scarce and is vital for community health. Just as Woodruff Oval and Anderson Ovals at J.L. Murphy are open for anyone to come along, run, kick the ball with their dog, so should the soccer grounds be available. J.L. Murphy Pavilion's also available for all community user groups as well, and it should be. I'd also urge Port Melbourne Soccer Club to appoint a more socially skilled grounds person, as the current gentleman there, I believe his name's George, who's at the club, is very far from welcoming to members of the local community, and in fact he's quite offensive when you try to walk onto any of the grounds or go into that particular area.
Please come to the end, Ms Maloney.
What's that? Sorry, Bernadette?
Please come to the end.
Yep, sure. So in summary, I'd urge all councillors not to approve any exclusive use of the pavilion or the grounds. I'm sure there's a compromise that can be reached where the soccer club has exclusive use for various times throughout the season. But for the rest of the year, the grounds and pavilions are available for community use in line with current City of Port Phillip requirements for casual use. Thank you, and I'm sorry I went over time.
Thank you. It's a very passionate subject. Now we'll go back to Rachel. Rachel from Port Melbourne. Hopefully your IT issues have been sorted out. Welcome.
Hi there, Bernadette. Can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Great. Look, you're right in saying that it is quite a passionate issue, and the soccer club lease. And look, I think that that's because this is the first time that it's come up in 15 years. So this is the one and only time the community have had to give some feedback on this lease. And look, I've got a lot of points that are similar to Annette, so I'm just going to skate over some of those. But I've got two main areas of focus. One is I would also like to see access to the ground by local residents, and also I also think that, you know, the club was required, which the community didn't realise, they were required to provide the community with some benefits, and I don't believe that they've done that. The proposal states the grounds are open for all residents. Look, that's not true. I know that the council worked with the club at the beginning of this year to get one gate open. This morning, the car park was locked again and all but one gate was open. I know there was a counsellor looking at the reserve this morning as well when they found the same thing. So to be truly accessible, at least one of the fences needs to be removed. And I would say that the middle fence, not the fences along the road, but the middle fence would make it a lot more accessible and welcoming to the community. I'm also a member of the adjoining Digging Community Garden, and we've been told we're not allowed to access the car park. Older members carry heavy materials from Williamstown Road, and the car park is often empty. We've also been told we can't use the toilets. I've tried to use the toilets at one stage, but the women's toilets are actually locked for storage. So I'm gathering that the club doesn't have very many female members. Look, I won't talk about Port Melbourne School, but I think that needs to be taken out of their proposal, because clearly that is not correct. They don't support the school. But also they often use an organisation called One Ball to promote themselves. Let's be clear, One Ball is fantastic, but it's funded by a separate community grant, which is run by a different entity. The Sharks do not fund or run One Ball, and the coaching is also funded by the Neighbourhood Community Grant. In the current lease document, the Junior Mini-Roos program is also reported as a community benefit, but players must pay, the junior players must pay between $770 and $990 per season. That's $100,000. Is that the timing for me, is it?
Yes, if you could just come to the end, Rachel, that'd be great.
Okay. So, look, I don't think they're providing a great community benefit. And I think that the current proposal as it stands really needs to be reviewed, because there are so many inaccuracies in the current proposal. And overall, I would just like more community access. I would particularly like dig in to get access to the car park and the toilets. And I think that just opening a gate that can be locked again is not the solution. I think that one of the fences needs to be removed.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I'd now like to call upon Russell Bottomy. He's speaking to item 14.2, also the proposed tenancy agreement for Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Welcome.
Thanks, Bernadine. Can you hear me?
Certainly can.
Okay. I'm a resident, ratepayer and Dig-In Community Garden member. I regularly attend the gardens and walk around the Murphy Reserve. I've made a written submission, which was sent through today, and I'm assuming that has been read by the councillors, or will be. I request the following items be added as conditions to granting a new lease to the Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Firstly, that the gates to the facility and the car park are left unlocked at all times. The gates, there's 2 pedestrian gates and 4 access gates, including the car park, are regularly padlocked, and access to the facility or easy access to the grounds for use by local residents has been made difficult. I've included photos in my written submission that I took yesterday of the number of locked gates. There is currently only 1 pedestrian gate that allows access to the facility in the southwest corner along Williamstown Road. Recently, the padlock was removed from this gate. So up until, I think just prior to Christmas, that gate also had a padlock. Additional pedestrian gates should be added to the eastern fence in line to allow easy access. My second point is that the dig-in members should have use of the car park. As Rachel just mentioned, many of the dig-in members and gardeners are elderly and currently have to carry their goods from either Williamstown Road or Plummer Street into the dig-in community garden. The car park is located right next to the gardens, and there are actually gates that provide access from the car park directly into the gardens. Currently, the car park is regularly locked, and members of the Port Melbourne Soccer Club have told dig-in gardeners, and I've had this experience myself, that they are not permitted to use the car park. Alternatively, a padlock could be added to the car park gates, keyed the same as the dig-in gardens locks, to allow dig-in members to use the car park if general access is not applicable. My third point is that the dig-in gardeners should have access to the toilets in the pavilion. As I mentioned before, quite a few of the gardeners are elderly, and we've been told by a particular gentleman, and I don't mention his name, that we are not permitted to use the toilets in the pavilion. We have to walk 250 metres to the J.L. Murphy Pavilion to use a toilet, and I believe that's totally unacceptable when there's a toilet less than 10 metres from the dig-in garden. Finally, my request to the City of Port Phillip is that we make available to the ratepayers transparency as to the total cost that the City of Port Melbourne contributes to the maintenance of the facility, both the pavilion and the playing fields, because that is not transparent. It's not in the proposal. I've spoken to a couple of the councillors, so I know that other facilities have gone through this process, and I would really like to know what the Port Melbourne Soccer Club contributes versus the cost to the ratepayers in maintaining that facility. Thank you.
Good timing. Thank you very much, Russell. Now, our next speaker is, I'd like to call upon Darren Hose, please, also speaking on 14.2, proposed tenancy agreement for Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Darren Hose from Albert Park. I'm currently a board member of Port Melbourne Soccer Club. And on behalf of James Victorian, President of Port Melbourne Soccer Club and the Port Melbourne Soccer Club Board, dear councillors, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to our valuable community. Port Melbourne Soccer Club are passionate about supporting our community and sporting endeavours. As a relatively new elective board, we are openly working with council since 2018, predominantly David Nankervis and his team, as well as sharing our visions with Dick Gross. The majority of our board are local residents and have children who have attended local schools, and we appreciate firsthand the need for community support. Port Melbourne Sharks is a community club which has been run by volunteers for the past 52 years. There is a lot of history in the club, which has produced Socceroo players and A-League players. The pavilion itself provides a family environment for current and past players and members dating back generations, which gives a sense of belonging to the community with lots of history. Using these facilities helps us generate fundraising income all year round, providing major source of revenue that pays for programs we offer to the community. We have unfortunately had to turn away kids, especially girls, wanting to participate in soccer, as well as we are lacking the additional playing pitches required to grow our members. We are also struggling to cater for men's and women's change rooms and shower facilities, as these are currently being shared. Our Port Melbourne Soccer Club vision is to support the vision of council, providing building infrastructure as well as developing inter-agency partnerships with supported connected communities within the Port Phillip community. We've been working to achieve this by fostering existing and new community relationships with local schools, local support groups, local businesses and local professional organisations. We've been working to develop community women's teams, looking to extend relationships with national sporting associations to attract infrastructure funding and looking to build our NPL soccer program as best practice. Following are our action categories, most of which are now underway and also form a KPI of our lease. School programs with Port Melbourne, Albert Park, Middle Park, St Kilda Park primary schools, where we've developed a community program to discuss opportunities with local primary schools through Adam Piddick, our A licensed coach, who's also completing his pro licence. However, due to COVID, we haven't been able to present these programs to date. We run an Emerald Hill Mission player sponsorship program. We run holiday and SAP programs. We run 2 community women's teams. We actually do support the One Ball program, where our major sponsor has donated over 130 Melbourne victory tickets for underprivileged children. We've coordinated bus transport to and from games for them. We've donated playing kits and boots. We support the Australian Corporate Games Organisation, the A-League Association, the Lengo Football Academy, where we donate end-of-year kit. We support Soccer Mums, Purple Laces and Girls Can programs, and we support local businesses. I've almost finished. In 2018, council officers worked with Port Melbourne Soccer Club to improve community access to our grounds, of which we supported as a club board. Our gates have been left open to public use outside of training and game days and have been all year. We are also passionate about continuing our 52-year history and would welcome additional playing fields, allowing us to provide a pathway for girls to progress into our recently established 2 senior women's community teams. Major fundraising will be available for facilities nominated to support the Australian and New Zealand successful bid to host the 2023 Women's World Cup. Port Melbourne Soccer Club, with the support of Council, has been nominated as a training facility, which we have worked tirelessly to achieve. As a result, we are working with the international governing body and government departments, including Council, to secure funding to improve our facilities, sharing this benefit with our club and greater community. Our aim includes pitch upgrades and female change facility upgrades. We are open to further asset improvements, including pitch 2 and club rooms, with the aim of sharing these upgrades with the broader community. As a board, we are open and available to explore these possibilities. On behalf of the Port Melbourne Soccer Club board, we thank you for your time tonight and your support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hose. Appreciate that. I now call upon Mr. John Turnbull, please, speaking also to item 14.2, the proposed tenancy agreement for Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Welcome, Mr. Turnbull.
Good evening, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. If you'd state your name again and your suburb, please.
Wonderful. Yeah, my name's John Turnbull. I live in Armadale currently, which isn't in the city of Port Phillip, but I do volunteer at Port Melbourne Soccer Club.
Terrific. Thank you.
So just a bit, as I say, I volunteer at the club, and I've been there for about 2 years now. Probably in an average week, I spend about 20 hours at the club, and I work with mini-roos through to seniors. My main role, however, has been, and has always been, as head of women's football at the club. That is where I'm going to focus my talk tonight. It is my passion, and it's the reason I joined the club. And I feel very strongly about the growth of women's soccer, not just at Port Melbourne, but within Australia. After relaunching the women's programme late in 2018, or since then, we've grown to over 40 members. And we have 2 teams, as previously mentioned, competing in the Victorian State League community competition. We have players ranging in age from 14 to 51 from a variety of backgrounds. And a great many of the squad live and work in Port Phillip. Port Melbourne Soccer Club wants to build a truly inclusive home for women's soccer in the area, and is committed to establishing a development pathway for local girls that can be a leader in its class. None of this can happen without facilities. The subsidised rent at JL Murphy allows us to keep our membership costs competitive for our members, for our female members, lowering the barrier to entry for many who would otherwise find themselves unable to participate in a sport which is disproportionately expensive to play in this country. Indeed, even with the rent as it is, the club runs the women's program at a loss, such as their commitment to growing female participation in the sport, and particularly in the local area. Unfortunately, despite this, constraints on both playing space and changing facilities prevent us from extending the program any further and beyond the 2 teams that we currently have. We'd truly love to add junior girls teams, but until we can ensure that the girls have access to female-only changing rooms, and until we have enough space on which they can train, we're rather hamstrung. The Women's World Cup, which is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, which the club, as you've heard, helped secure by hosting a delegation from the world governing body, FIFA, will be a catalyst for the World Game in Australia, which will bring tourism, investment and attention to the Port Phillip area. It will also see interest in the game swell, and demand to play the sport is likely to explode, especially among women. I truly believe that not only should the council renew Port Melbourne's tenancy at J.L. Murphy, but that they should work with the club, the state government, local businesses and soccer's governing body to bring the facilities up to a level that can cope with both the current and future demand, and that can be held up as an example of City of Port Phillip's commitment to growing female participation in the sport. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turnbull. Now I'd like to call upon Kamal Ibrahim, speaking also to item 14.2, the proposed tenancy agreement of Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Welcome. If you could state your name and your suburb, please.
Hi everyone, thanks Bernadette. My name is Kamal Ibrahim. I lived in Port Melbourne for 15 years. I recently just moved to St Kilda. Firstly, I'd like to thank the councillors for letting me speak tonight. I have a lot of things to say, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I'm not sure what kind of arrangements Port Melbourne Soccer Club have with other organizations in the community, but I can only speak with my experience as running One Ball program, which is supported by the City of Port Phillip and Port Melbourne Sharks Soccer Club. As a junior, as a refugee, I came in 2003 from Ethiopia, where I found very hard to settle in the City of Port Phillip. I can only say football have saved me. Gave me a hope and belief that I needed at that time. And I went and played, represent my country and my state in a high level. And I know so many kids who has a dream to represent their country and to play as a highest level. And my passion is right now in coaching and helping kids to enjoy this beautiful game. And there's no other sport that I believe than football that can bring so many, parents and kids from different cultures, different religion together. Port Melbourne Sharks Soccer Club, since my program started, they been very open-minded in anything that I have request. They've let me use the grounds and for the change rooms and the pavilion for food and drinks, and to do presentation there, and also to put my equipment there. And I don't want to mention names, but a few of the board members have helped me with connecting me to people who can help me run my organization, people who are willing to fund my organization, and that's been successful. And also, I've requested tickets to Melbourne Victory games, where I took the kids, supported by the City of Port Phillip, providing us a bus. That was an unbelievable experience for the kids. Most of the kids had never been to a stadium before, and that was, and ever since then, every week I have get a ticket from Port Melbourne board members, that as much as I want to give these tickets to the kids so they can enjoy, and some of the players from Port Melbourne Shark have come and supported my program in coaching and mentoring the kids as well. So can Port Melbourne Shark do more to the community? Absolutely. And does the community, everyone else could be involved, enjoy the facilities, amazing facilities we have? I believe so, but I think there's a room for everybody, and there's a room for all the kids to enjoy and to use the ground. So I just like to say that that in the last 3 years, the club has done a lot more than since I was there. I've been in Port Melbourne for a long time, and yes, the gate's been locked for a long time. But in the last 2-3 years, even myself, I've been in talks with the council. How can we engage the community and help as much as we can? And I've seen a lot of improvement with the girls. A lot of girls participants coming through now. And I just want to say that there's a lot we can do, but I think we've come a long way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'd now like to call upon Julio Avian, please. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Speaking to item 14.2, which is the proposed tenancy agreement, Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Welcome. If you could state your name again and your suburb, please.
It's Julio Avian of Middle Park. Thank you, Bernadette and Counsellors, for the opportunity. I've been a local resident of the City of Port Phillip for in excess of 20 years, and I have also been a football member of Middle Park Soccer Club and Port Melbourne Soccer Club for over 9 years. Tonight, there's firstly, I would like to thank David Nankervis and the Sport Rec team for the fantastic work achieved together for showcasing J.R. Murphy and our football club to FIFA, which now we have this wonderful opportunity to be a part of a global sporting event. I would like to also touch on the One Ball program with Kamal. This program is uniquely uniquely an opportunity to break so many racial barriers that it's very difficult to explain the benefits. But how Port Melbourne Soccer Club has assisted with Kamal at the embryonic stage is that the club has supplied the One Ball program with football kits. We have been instrumental with providing over 100 tickets to every international Asian Championship League game involving Melbourne Victory for Kamal's program. And every home game for Victory, we have been able to provide 10 tickets for Kamal's participants to enjoy football at the highest level when many of the participants may not be able to afford to attend. In addition to this, we've been able to engage support from Albert Park Rotary and also VicPol, who want to work closely together with the program. In addition to this, local businesses such as the Armstrong Street food stall have been involved in the program, providing food for the participants on Sunday, and also personal time from board members, senior footballers, and also coaches that assist Kamal and his program on Sunday afternoons. In addition to that, the club has also engaged the participants to be part of the senior football program, along with their own mini-roo program, walking the senior players out onto the pitch and making sure that there is real engagement and acceptance of the One Ball football program. One point that I'd like to clarify very clearly is that the gates are open. David Nankervis and our football club have all agreed, it's in our lease arrangement, the gates are open. And it's probably something that we need to work to, that's communicated and reconstructed to demonstrate to the community that we all have access. I am running out of time, but I would just like to advocate the points that Darren mentioned before, that we have worked with Port Melbourne Primary School with Peter Martin, which we engaged Simon Young to facilitate a program a couple of years ago, but unfortunately that didn't work out, and as a volunteer basis we've had to restructure that. We've implemented holiday programs for the community during school holidays. Again, just supporting John Turnbull's comments with the female participation. You know, we've had senior players and even Kamal himself train together with the women team, creating down all programs and having full acceptance of the LGBTQI community within the women's program. We've also been part of the Australian Corporate Games, of which Darren has touched upon, and obviously the opportunity with the FIFA World Cup. In short, we've demonstrated that we do provide a valuable community contribution, and we would like to see the proposed tenancy agreement be supported by all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evian. And now I'd like to call upon Amanda Moore, please, in relation to item 14.2, the proposed tenancy.
Good evening, Mayor Bernadine Voss, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amanda. I'm Port Melbourne born and bred, 30 years in the area, a life member of Fisherman's Bend Gymnastics Club, former gymnast since 1983, former head coach, club manager, and I'm currently managing memberships and marketing. Commuting from Edithvale, such is my passion for the club and Port Phillip community. Regarding the proposal for Port Melbourne Soccer Club's rent agreement and use of public space, I've read the PDF in full. As mentioned by a resident in a Port Focus Facebook thread, Fisherman's Bend Gymnastics Club pays nearly 40 times the amount of rent that is being proposed to the soccer club. That is around $117,000 per annum. FBGC on average has 480 active members from City of Port Phillip, plus hundreds more children attending play gym for toddlers 1 to 5 years, birthday parties and holiday programs. FBGC has a fantastic relationship with the City of Port Phillip community and holds free incursions for all kindergartens, all age groups and classes, childcare centres and schools in City of Port Phillip who are interested. And the club supports their fundraisers by request by way of voucher donations. FBGC are so grateful for the few thousands in funding from the amazing people at South Melbourne Community Chest, with support from City of Port Phillip, of course, which allows the club to subsidise fees for a number of vulnerable and disadvantaged children from City of Port Phillip, and supports our leadership program whereby we train our senior gymnasts and teens from City of Port Phillip to become qualified gymnastics coaches. We also recently received 2 grants from Toyota and City of Port Phillip for 2 laptops and a rail bar co-funded by the club. The Gymnastics Club is desperate for the support that other AFL and soccer clubs in the area have, though, when it comes to rent and facility support. Yes, gymnastics requires a large space to operate in, but so do AFL and soccer clubs, yet FBGC does not have council-funded space or facilities, as clubs from these codes do, or rental assistance when the Gymnastics Club is contributing just as much or even more to City of Port Phillip children and residents. FBGC covers all abilities from grassroots to competitive state level, possibly national if the sport wasn't so underfunded. It's a year-round sport, not seasonal. And FBGC doesn't receive sponsorship dollars aside from the grants mentioned above. We promote healthy lifestyles, so the club also doesn't benefit from the sale of alcohol. It just seems that predominantly female sports are already disadvantaged when it comes to sponsorship opportunities, and even more so when there isn't a level playing field in terms of funding. The inequality when it comes to council support is a gross injustice to female sports and not-for-profit clubs like FBGC that operate in the same municipality as Port Melbourne Sharks, Port Melbourne Colts and PMFC. FBGC did originally operate in council facilities, the community centre in Garden City. However, in addition to the setup and pack down requirements every day, the club outgrew the facilities with a jump in membership from 100 gymnasts to over 400. We've had it as many as 520 odd, and our gymnasts simply couldn't be accommodated in the premises. A large increase in participation is a great success story, but the rent on the now permanently set up warehouse in Port Melbourne is huge. FBGC currently runs at full capacity with morning kinder gym sessions and after school classes. FBGC would be thrilled to have a councillor visit our premises at some stage, and we welcome discussion about increased funding from council. We can even envisage the club being utilised for some council programs or sessions for seniors or special needs groups during off-peak times in particular. We've always had the best interest of our local community at heart, as is reflected in our club values and vision for the club. Gymnastics is a foundation sport and develops physical skills like balance, flexibility, muscular endurance, power, strength, coordination, as well as having a positive impact on the vestibular system and auditory process. These things are critical for reading and maths and listening in the classroom, etc. Building bone density and enhancing social and emotional skills for children and youths. These are all lifelong skills to have. Our club has never been pushy when it comes to requests for council funding, and we've always been proactive in trying to remain financially viable. It's just so disheartening when we know we're providing such a wonderful service for the children of the City of Port Phillip and setting them up with life skills, but the risk of the club folding after around 70 years is at the forefront of our minds when our rent is so high and there's no rent or facility support received. We would dearly love to see a purpose-built council facility eventually built, or a more fair and equitable allocation of funds for all community clubs with respect to their levelling of engagement with and service to City of Port Phillip children and residents. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Ms Moore. Now, we've received 4 further submissions, and they're going to be read out on behalf of the members of the public. And I'll call upon the name of each member of the public and refer to the Coordinator of Governance to read a summary of the submission. And a copy of all statements will be published in full on Council's website. So first up, and there are a number of submissions, but from this person, Adrian Jackson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Adrian Jackson's first question reads, while accepting that the coronavirus has disrupted sporting club activities recently and perhaps forever as the coronavirus is here to stay in my view, why are ratepayers loaning funds for sporting clubs in the first place for kitchens and cool rooms of all things? Surely beside the playing facilities, these clubs only need toilets and change room facilities. If they want to socialise after the games, let them go to a nearby cafe or hotel and support local businesses instead now that we don't have 6 o'clock hotel closing times anymore. Many clubs, sporting and otherwise, were set up to get around the former 6 o'clock closing legislation for hotels of the past, but that is history now. Why don't sporting clubs review membership fees if funds are needed, as Port Phillip is now an affluent middle-class municipality?
Thank you. And as this is an item for public question time, I'm going to ask Mr. Johnson, please, if you could address those questions.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll ask Council's Manager of Open Space and Recreation, Mr. Anthony Trail, to provide a response to Mr. Jackson's question.
Thank you, Mr. Trail. Hello, Mr. Trail.
Thank you. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Council resolved on the 4th of March to loan Jail Murphy Pavilion $50,000 to install additional kitchen infrastructure after they had already contributed $200,000 to the pavilion project originally. Sporting pavilions will play an important role for our communities, not just sport, to be socially connected and raise funds from community programming. The pavilion has already been a fantastic support in other essential food services from this facility, while sport has been able to operate during these COVID times. Sporting clubs will play an important role for our community recovery process when COVID restrictions are relaxed in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Trail. Now, Kirsty, the second question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Adrian Jackson's second question reads, a decade ago, I suggested a few times that 40k speed limit should be the norm in all built-up area of residential streets. Nothing came of it until a few years ago when the government introduced these limits. In Port Phillip, it is working well in Middle Park and environs. This 40-kilometre speed limit was also imposed on the coastal road between Fitzroy Street and Luna Park too, even though this is a Victoria Roads, which I think is great. 40-kilometre limits are also needed in Kerford Road, Albert Park, and Canterbury Road, Middle Park. Kerford Road is only about a short section but has a few uncontrolled crossings like Richardson Street, so there is no need to travel any faster. Canterbury Road is longer but has 3 or 4 pedestrians crossing and a tram turning light at Mills Street that slows or stops car traffic, as do the lights at Fitzroy Street and Kerford Road. Councillors impose 40-kilometre speed limit in these 2 roads.
Thank you. Ms Rosick, are you able to address the request for 40k speed limits for Kerford Road and Canterbury Road, Middle Park, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, I can. Just to point out, the council continues to progressively reduce speed limits on local streets across the municipality, but the speed limits are major traffic control items that will require approval from the Department of Transport prior to installation, and so it isn't within council's control. Canterbury Road is declared an arterial road which is managed by the Department of Transport, and once again it's the responsibility of the department to make any changes. With regard to the Shrine to Sea project, which is being led by DELP, it is intended to reduce the roads near Canterbury Road and Kerford Road down from its posted speed limit from 50 to 40 kilometres an hour, subject to the Department of Transport review and approval. And we will continue to, council officers will continue to work with the Department of Transport to progressively reduce speed limits on roads within the City of Port Phillip to improve safety in accordance with Council's Move, Connect, Live integrated transport strategy.
Thanks, Ms Rosick. And then the final one from Adrian Jackson, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the third submission from Adrian Jackson reads, I just made an online submission for the budget concerning not funding activities that are closed or cancelled, like events and galleries because of the coronavirus. However, while most contact details were requested, the address of the submitter was absent. Whether the submitter is a ratepayer or resident of Port Phillip is required. We don't want people not connected with Port Phillip making frivolous or dodgy demands for funding in the budget. Further, Council should not be funding and planning events in 2021 that won't happen, like sadly the St Kilda Festival. Recently, the St Kilda Film Festival had to go online when St Kilda Theatres and the Town Hall could not be used.
Thank you, Kirsty. Mr Carroll, are you able to address those issues around the details collected?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not able to answer that question around the details collected. I'll have to take that on notice and follow up. I can thank Mr Jackson for his feedback on the budget, and happy to say that we've currently got the budget out for consultation as he's highlighted. We'll make sure his feedback is put into that process and considered as we finalise the budget over the next month.
Thank you. And now we'll go to our last submitter for public question time, Mr Trevor White.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Trevor White submits, many ratepayers and residents of the City of Port Phillip have either lost money in their business, been put on JobKeeper, or lost their job and now on JobSeeker. These people need support from the City. Will Council support ratepayers, businesses and community groups who are experiencing financial hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic by giving rate waivers, rate relief or deferrals? Business and landlord rate relief should be extended to tenants who do not directly pay rates, with the agreement of their landlord that any deferral or rebate will be directly passed on to the tenant. It is suggested that, to be eligible, ratepayers, direct or indirect, such as tenants, must be a commercial and community group ratepayer who have been required to close due to COVID-19 and are eligible for the JobKeeper's payment. Residential ratepayers should be eligible for the JobSeeker or JobKeeper payment. Any other ratepayer experiencing financial hardship due to income dropping by 15% or more It's easy. Council can use existing documentation, which has already been verified by the ATO, hence it's easy to implement. Many in the community were disappointed that the majority of councillors voted against having a budget option prepared for review based on a no rate increase option. This is an opportunity to support ratepayers and tenants who have lost income in their business, on JobKeeper, or lost their job and on JobSeeker. An example of this rate support can be found at the City of Mitcham in Adelaide, which have adopted such support for residents and businesses. Madam Mayor, you're on mute.
Thank you. Could have gone on there for a little while. That's the end of public question time and submissions. Thank you to everyone that has contributed to that. We'll move to item 5, which is councillor question time. Ask questions from councillors. Do you have any questions, councillors? If not, I have one that I'd like to ask. And possibly to you, Ms. Rosick, about statutory planning and the exhibition of signs on properties. When will the signs on properties advertising a planning application recommence?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the intent is that when the state government announces the COVID-19 restrictions are relaxed and the town hall is able to be reopened, we will recommence our services of providing signs and boards. In the interim, we'll continue to fulfil our obligations under the Planning and Environment Act and make sure that we provide public notifications of applications by sending out notices by letter in lieu of the on-site notices.
Ms. Rosick, is the reason for them not being produced at the moment because someone needs to go and pick them up and then place them on the property and there's nowhere to pick them up? Is that the key reason?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. So we want to limit people's exposure to any risks in terms of picking up the virus. So at the moment, we're not encouraging people to come to the town hall and pick up the signs. But as I said, we're still keeping the people who live close to developments informed by sending out letters. So as soon as it's safe to do so, we will provide that service again.
Thank you, Ms. Rosick. Any further questions, councillors? I note there are none. So then we'll move to item 6 on the agenda, which is the sealing schedule, and we don't have any items requiring sealing tonight. Item 7 is the petitions and joint letters. And councillors, we have one petition on tonight's agenda, 7.1, the request to access the St Kilda Peanut Farm Pavilion and oval lighting by the Dog Owners Group of St Kilda. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? We have heard from 2 submitters tonight. I note there are no questions for the officers. Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Copsey to move and Councillor...
I did have a question. Sorry, I think I got it in there, but...
Okay, Councillor Brand, you may not have it to sending it to me, but I will allow that question before I continue. Thank you, Councillor Brand.
I'm sorry, it got sent to, anyway, okay. Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to get a few ideas about how this would work from the officers. It sounds like a very good idea to me in general, but the clashes with training time. Is this petition for just this year at the moment when in the COVID-19 era, or is this for much longer when there will be training on the oval?
Thank you, Councillor Brand. I'll ask Mr. Johnson to take that up, in noting that we're just receiving this report tonight. So the officer,
yeah, I'm happy to receive it actually. I'll ask these questions later.
Oh, well, you've asked that one now, so Mr. Johnson may know the answer.
Okay, that'll be good.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'll ask Mr. Trail, who might be able to speak to the logistics of how this could potentially work. But I'd note what you just said in that tonight we are receiving the petition. We have some work to do to look at how this can work with other user groups that use Peanut Farm, and also the logistics around controlling the lights. But I'll ask Mr. Trail to add anything else if he wishes.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. There is an opportunity to look at a different arrangement while sport is not active, but the petition will also consider ongoing opportunities, noting when sport gets returns in the future that where there may be some opportunities for both these to coexist. It's very difficult for both these to coexist at the same time on the plane surface. So that'll all come back at a future meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Trail. Now, Councillor Gross, I heard you saying a few words earlier as well. Did you want to ask a question?
No, I thought I was going to move the officers' rec.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask that again. So now that we don't have any questions, I'm going to ask: do we have an office? We have a council's officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Okay, Councillor Gross to move and Councillor Baxter to second. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. Look, I know this group really well. They're really active. They're really friendly and inclusive. They do need some assistance with lighting during the vicissitudes and darkness of winter. So I think it's a good idea, but I just wanted to say to everyone that our usual form in getting a petition like this is to refer it to the officers so they could shed their wisdom on it. Every Friday night people arrive with seats and beverages and have a very convivial community event, and this group's great and we should encourage them.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Then I'll put that motion under division and I'll call upon each councillor for your vote. First up, Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. Now, I have had a request for a quick break, and so I will agree to that tonight. Councillors, just 5 minutes, please, and we will just go on a break and we'll be back at 7:55. Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to go to the presentation of reports, and I'm going to go to item 9.1 first up, which is the final NDIS report. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? I have one short one. Perhaps Mr. Keenan. The Southport Neighbourhood House Community Centre was used for some of the NDIS people. I'm just wondering, I believe they've now moved out now. Are you able to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Through you.
Yeah, I'll defer to Ms McGarry. Thanks, Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's right. So the Brotherhood of St Lawrence was appointed the local area coordinator for the Bayside and Peninsula region and needed premises in the northern end of that region, which was Port Phillip. We worked in a significant partnership with the Brotherhood, and we were able to support them for a short period in that facility whilst they located a more permanent facility next to Centrelink in South Melbourne. and that was much appreciated by the Brotherhood and enabled some really good partnership working.
Thank you, Ms McGorry. Councillor Copps, do you have a question?
Yes, please. The report does note that there has been issues with availability of some services, for example, social inclusion services, and note some of the efforts by officers to ensure that clients that we're aware of currently receive assistance. I was wondering if officers could elaborate at all on where to from here in terms of advocacy and watching for other gaps like that.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Ms McGorry.
Thank you. Yes, social inclusion groups. The NDIA is still relatively immature in its implementation compared with other putting people first initiatives around the world. And one of the areas of growth around the world has been around friendship groups to beat loneliness. This has been highlighted to the agency, not just from Port Phillip, but nationally. And there's a range of advocacy taking place, largely led by the disability advocates in statewide and nationally. But we have also been very proactive in pointing out to local area coordinator the gaps for individuals that we've known about, and we've tried to facilitate a slow transition for those individuals out of council services into something more appropriate. So we've given them a little bit more time.
Thank you. Councillor Brand, you have a question? Turn off you're on mute. You're still on mute, Councillor Brand. There we go.
I'm sorry. Yes, I just had too many screens open. Just on point 7.3 on the financial impact, I just lost the thread when I got to this particular point. Could I just get the explanation of the 300,000 operating the loss? I just don't quite understand what this clause is saying, explaining to us.
Certainly. Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So the state government, prior to the implementation of the NDIA, disability services were funded by the state government. And as part of the state government funding to council for services for people under the age of 65 years. Now, when the NDIA was, the tripartite agreement was signed with Victoria and the National Disability Insurance Agency and the federal government, the agreement was that the funding would follow the clients into the Commonwealth funded system, so that level of grant would be withdrawn from current providers who didn't register for the NDIS and return to the NDIA to fund those agencies that were providing specialist disability services under the NDIS. So this was the amount that was identified for the City of Port Phillip as the funding withdrawal to enable that. We anticipated that. We kept very close and careful records of who transitioned and the unit costs of their care and support. So we were prepared for that funding withdrawal. And we managed that without, as you can see in the report, without an overspend, and in fact delivered some savings to council ratepayers.
Fantastic, thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Crawford to move. Do I have a seconder? And Councillor Gross to second. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the motion?
I just wanted to say thank you to all of our officers for the hard work they've done in this space and will continue to do. I think that a higher rate, 46% of our clients that got the NDIS when we weren't expecting that, is a great outcome. So just wanted to say a huge thank you, because I know a lot of work and a lot of care and compassion goes into it. And I really hope for our residents that have moved to the NDIA, it does provide a lot more freedom, and I know it will be imperfect, but I hope in the long run it is, a great program for you. But yeah, thank you.
Councillor Gross.
I'm right, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll also just reiterate again, I think, what Councillor Crawford said, because it is really incredible, and thank the officers for providing this final status report after the transition to NDIS. To get 46% of the under 65s over to NDIS is more than double what was expected in this leftover or left out cohort. It's a wonderful effort, and I just want to say thank you from the community to the council officers for going above and beyond for our community. It is really appreciated. Councillor Crawford, would you like to close? Then I will put that motion, again, councillors under division, and I will call upon each councillor to vote. First up, Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic. Can you say it again, Councillor Simic? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. For. I can.
For.
Oh, there we go. For. Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Well done. That is unanimously carried. Now we'll go to item 9.2, which is the Multicultural Advisory Committee update and the All One Together Anti-Racism campaign. Councillors, again, we heard from two of the committee members earlier on today. Do you have any questions of the officers, please? I have one question I'd like to ask the officers, and this is probably again to Mr. Keenan. In relation to the All One Together Anti-Racism campaign, I was quite interested in what would be the one action council should take as part of this commitment. Do you have any ideas?
Through you, Mayor, we would work with the advisory committee to come up with one. I think, on my own personal view, and I suspect the view of the committee, is to target something that's meaningful and practical, but we would work with the committee to come up with the one action. There would be a range of things that we could do, and some of those outlined in the action plan that's attached.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keenan. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, then we have an officer's recommendation, councillors. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Crawford to move. I am happy, and Councillor Gross to second. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I feel a bit of guilt because my second came in front of Oggie's, and seeing he was so intimately involved, perhaps he should speak to it at least.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Councillor Simic.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gross. I am I'm using a different device tonight and having some issues with the buttons, so I wasn't quick enough in getting in to move or second. But certainly really endorse this proposal and like to thank the Multicultural Advisory Committee for working collectively on this proposal that's come to Council, and for us to be looking at it tonight and being able to endorse an extension, but also endorse Council to take the All One Together pledge. I think the extension is warranted given the fact that the committee is only just getting started, and the committee's appointed an incredible chair who's leading the committee at the moment, also a deputy chair, but all of the committee members come from such various backgrounds and walks of life. You heard a few of the people's accounts of their lives tonight, but there are so many different accounts of people who've lived incredible lives. I secondly and importantly endorse Council to take the All One Together pledge. I think that this is a really important step for Council to take. Like many, I've also experienced racism in Australia. It comes in all sorts of forms, but an important thing for us is to be aware of it as a community, to be talking about it as an issue, so that we can all work together to address the many problems that this causes for us to have a cohesive community that's working together, which really is what underpins all progress and success for any community. So thank you to the Multicultural Advisory Committee for their work. I'm really proud to be part of the Multicultural Advisory Committee, and I think it's in great hands with the chair that's been appointed. So I'll leave it there, and I hope that all councillors will support this tonight as a unanimous show of support, I hope, for anti-racism and the work of the Multicultural Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Simic. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Then I'll also just quickly say I'm very happy to extend the committee's membership and also welcomed tonight the committee's presentation on what they've done so far since they commenced. The All One Together campaign, the chair wrote to me originally on behalf of the committee and requested council support for this, and councillors are certainly very keen to see it come to council. The campaign provides opportunities for organisations to collaborate and tackle discrimination. Organisations are asked to join the campaign and commit to delivering an action to address racism. So, yeah, I'd welcome and thank very much the chair and the deputy chair for attending, and also I just wanted to thank Councillor Simic for your tenure and time on the committee. It's appreciated. So would Councillor, who moved it, Councillor Crawford, would you like to close?
Just to say that Port Phillip as a council and prior has always been an area known for its inclusion. So I think it is a good reminder that there are different kinds of inclusion that we always need to be thinking about and getting better at. So thank you for this coming to council and for the people speaking tonight. And, you know, all one together in a pandemic is even more timely that we are all in this together and we are a community.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Then I'll now put that motion again under division and call upon each councillor's vote. First up is Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. So 9.3 is the Victorian State Government review into decriminalisation of sex work and the submission. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? I note there are none. Councillor Brand, do you want to ask a question?
I would, thank you very much. I just want to ask officers on the issue of community amenity, especially around the issue of street sex work. I just think there's I think there's a lack of coverage of that particular issue in the report, and I'm just wondering if you can either point to where I've missed seeing it or where it should go, perhaps.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. It's there in a couple of places. In a response to question 3, Council requests that the government pay specific attention to impact of decriminalisation on street-based sex work. Is complex and often involves vulnerable members of the community. That we would not want the regulation of that to shift to council. There is a proposal where the we have been asked to consider whether footpath trading permits would be a suitable mechanism, and we're saying that we don't think that is a mechanism. In the past, council had originally in past councils that had a proposal to have a tolerance zone, but that was then reversed by that council, so we've not put anything specifically along those lines. And I'm just going through. Question 5 also covers the amenity issue in relation to street-based sex work.
Is that safety and amenity, that chapter?
Yes.
I just haven't got it in front of me because
Yes.
it just seems to be covering safety and not amenity.
Yes, I know it is in there because I've done the report. I'm just trying to find. Through environmental design, addressing the issues of nuisance traffic, noise, litter, intimidation, etc.
I guess I'm just wondering, I'm not clear what our I just haven't got the recommend. I can't get things up in front of me here, which is a bit of a problem. We endorse the written submission, and is this to this, and that would be fine. By endorsing the submission, we would be finalising it.
So it's not this isn't a written, you recall, Councillor Brand, that the process for this is not a written submission. It's not a parliamentary inquiry. They've sent some questions for us to respond to, and we've responded to the questions that relate specifically to local government. So this one, I don't think this will even be forwarded to. We will offer to hand it over to the Member of Parliament and the office, the Public Services undertaking the review, but it's basically oral submission from officers to the review.
Okay. It's just there is a particular issue just sort of lying here that I would actually like to have more discussion of, but
Do you have a question, Councillor Brand?
I'm just wondering what the opportunity for that is.
It's now.
Right. Well, I don't think we're going to workshop it here in this council meeting. So I'll just leave it.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Councillor Baxter.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to ask, well, first off, thanks to the officers for preparing this, but just to ask, and it seems that it does, but just to ask, does this submission that we're making, does it accord with the decision that was made earlier this year or late last year? I can't even remember now. With regards to council support for full decriminalisation of sex work.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it does. There's explicit support for decriminalisation. I think the other issues that are raised, which are around amenity, etc., are not specifically related to whether sex work's criminalised or not. So, for example, the issues related to street sex work, criminalising street sex work hasn't permitted it happening. It hasn't addressed amenity issues. So we would be very keen to address those amenity issues, obviously, but we don't believe, and history has shown us, that criminalising sex work doesn't help address those amenity issues.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Any further questions, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Baxter to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gross to second. Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Copsey to second. My apologies. Got in no second earlier. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, just to again thank the officers for preparing this. Obviously, there is a bit of constraint in terms of we're working with a specific state government review that has a specific way that it wants to engage with local council on these on this issue, which is largely about how does council want to regulate things, how does council interact with this industry and stuff like that, and far less about how we might manage decriminalisation, from our perspective. So I'm glad that we're engaging with this process. I'm glad that we're continuing to support decriminalisation, which obviously I put a motion some time ago, but I believe that just simply builds on the support this council has had for a very long time for decriminalisation and harm minimisation in this area. So I'm glad that the Victorian government is reviewing this and engaging with local governments in this respect. I'm hoping to see that they will come to a determination or decision later that decriminalisation is the best way to keep people safe and to deal with a number of adjacent issues such as the amenity issues that Councillor Brand mentioned, and that we can keep people safe, healthy, and working in whatever industry they wish to work in.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Baxter said it all. I'm good.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Brand?
Yes, I speak strongly in favour of it. I'm very in favour of the decriminalisation, harm minimisation approach to it. So I think we've got all of that right, and I think that the safety issues, well, there's just everything which is spelled out in this report I strongly endorse. I think there's just one or two things which aren't maybe focused on enough, which I think is the next issue, which is this a bit of a speciality in the city of Port Phillip. Historically, has been street sex work, and there's a lot of implications in this to how that can be regulated. Which there's just a lot of questions which I think need further explanation and discussion in this thing. So I'm feeling a little disappointed that there isn't some more focus on that, but that will come out in the wash, I'm sure. But I just want to mark it as an important part of the equation is the local amenity of in that particular form of sex work, which I think needs it may revolutionise that and turn it into a completely different set of situations and problems and mechanisms that we have to regulate it effectively, and that would be great. But just leaving that little reservation aside, I'm very much in favour of this, and I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Any further councillors? Councillor Baxter, would you like to close?
No, thank you.
Then I'll put that motion again under division and call upon each councillor for their vote. First up, Councillor Pearl.
Abstain.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss, 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4. I'd just like to point out the last page there's an error. The report in front of us hasn't included the name on the last page. It's still got 3 X's as a placemaker.
Thank you. Just raise a point of order at this point, if that's substantial. Mr. CEO, I did see that in my report too, but I forgot about it. And whether that could be
through you, Madam Mayor, the
33.2
recommendation allows me to make correct. I'll add a name in there as a minor amendment. Thank you for pointing it out, Councillor Bond.
Thank you. So Councillor Bond was 4. We'll keep going under that. Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
That motion is carried. Thank you. Item 14.1, is the notice of intention to lease, to finalise, that is, Eildon Road Children's Centre Inc., the Avenue Children's Centre Inc. and the Elwood Children's Centre Inc. Councillors, we didn't have any members of the public speak to this item. Do you have any questions of the officers? I note there are none. So do we have a mover for that or something different for the officer's recommendation? I see Councillor Gross to move and Councillor Baxter to second. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would like to say just a few things. It is important with the people who we deal with to give a degree of certainty. And this gives a degree of certainty to these 3 much-loved children's centres. They are community-run centres. They have building issues because they are renovated houses rather than fit-for-purpose buildings. But notwithstanding that, I think it's really appropriate at this stage to give certainty of tenure to them and to have a conversation over the next few years about how we make them more appropriate in and up to modern standards for childcare. So I welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, look, I just agree with Councillor Gross. I think it's important that that we provide some certainty here, as there has been some uncertainty. So this will hopefully help.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Then I'll put the motion under division and a call upon each councillor for your vote. First up, Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss, 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. Now we'll move to item 14.2, which is the proposed tenancy agreement, the Port Melbourne Soccer Club. We heard from quite a few people, councillors, earlier. Do you have any questions of the officers or wish to take up any questions from the submitters? I have a couple of questions I would like to ask, please. Actually, we'll go to Councillor Crawford first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to take up a few of the questions. I guess the first one was around the toilets. Now, I wasn't clear from the report whether they are public access toilets and whether as part of the new agreement that Dig In would have access to those toilets, and who cleans them and who's responsible for them, I guess, is my first question. And then my other question was, out of season, which I'm assuming is March to September, a seasonal permit, are the gates open, or is that facility shut in that non-season period? As a starting couple of questions.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. I think I'll go to Ms McNeil first.
Through you, Mayor, I might ask my colleague, Mr. Trail or Ms Murdoch, to provide that answer.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Anthony Trail here. The first question regards to the toilets. There is door external facing toilets that are attached to this pavilion, so that can be incorporated, and that's a bit of feedback that we've taken on board. So it is currently part of the lease of the pavilion, but council can entertain to make them public toilets with the access and take on the cleaning responsibilities, or look at community benefit regarding that. So that's something that we will take on board. In regards to access to the playing fields, so the playing fields are on a licence agreement currently and proposed. That means They should be fully accessible anytime. So when there's non-sporting fixtures program there, it should be free for any community member to go into those areas. That is through the non-sporting season of the summer, but also at times through the winter where there is no soccer or other sporting activities planned.
Could I ask a follow-up question, please, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Crawford.
Obviously, it's not as, I don't think it's as obvious to the residents around that the fence, because there is a fence, that they are open. Who is responsible for opening those gates? Is it us or is it the soccer club, like at a certain time each day or night? How does that arrangement work?
Mr. Trail?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the arrangement is that those gates should be open at all times except when there's a National Premier League fixture on. So the feedback's been quite clear tonight, that it demonstrates that we still have some work to do to make these spaces feel more welcoming for our community. So removal of sections of more fencing is required, I think specifically to the east and west of pitch 2, and the entrance to the car park area needs a bit of an overhaul. So while still allowing the pitch 1 to be closed for North National Premier League fixtures, it is disappointing members of our community digging group don't feel welcome to use that public car park adjacent to their gardens. So we as officers can look at making that space feel more welcoming as per its intent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trail. And Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much. A couple of questions to take up first. What's the total cost to council in terms of maintenance to the facility, foregone rent? One of the questions that was asked by the public before. Sorry, I don't recall who asked it.
It was someone from the gymnastic, I think. Miss McNeil?
Through you, Mayor, I might ask Ms Murdoch if she has the answer to that one.
Certainly. Ms Murdoch.
Through you, Mayor. The current annual cost of the Pavilion reactive maintenance is around $36,000 for the Pavilion, and the report states that we've spent around $95,000 in capital works on the Pavilion in the last 2 and a bit years. The maintenance costs of the grounds that are being used are around about $50,000, approximately about $50,000 a year. And the rent foregone, so the rent for the Pavilion is at $16,000 per annum. That's the market value, and the pitches have a market value of around about $122,000.
So if my maths is right, that's an annual subsidy, not including the capital works, of $224,000.
Your guess is as good as mine. Sorry, my math is not that good. Adding that up.
That's okay. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. I'll just roll on to another question.
Yes.
Thanks. In the submissions, there was a number of talk about the percentage amount of land that this is taking up at Murphy's Reserve. Somebody's saying it's 20%, somebody's saying 15%, another person said it was as big as a third. What is the percentage size of the lease and licence area of the total surface area of Murphy's Reserve?
Miss Murdoch.
For you, Mayor, I'm not quite sure on what the percentage would be for the whole area, and I have to take that on notice.
That's okay.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl, any further questions? I'll ask one in the meantime if you like.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the officers that produced this report what fact-checking they did in regards to the information that was given to them by the club. We've heard a number of conflicting pieces of information tonight. Mr. Trail?
Through you, Madam Mayor, happy to take this question. As evident by the community submissions on this item earlier, I think improved documentation is required on these community benefits. There was fact-checking done by officers speaking directly with the club and checking their website for information. But I think bringing this forward when this comes back to council, there's more detail required and verification. On review, some of these benefits listed are a little bit misleading and need to be corrected, and others that have not been documented should be included as well. So we'll make an assurance to ensure that is corrected when that comes back to council.
Thank you. Another question I have is, why wasn't there any breakdown in postcode from members, given over the years there's been, quite a bit of criticism around where the members are actually coming from and what benefit that council gives to the community. Just wondering why that wasn't provided in the report.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Postcodes is not something that we grab from our clubs. It is something that we would like to grab in an improvement area. It will help us make informed decisions and pass on information. So that's something we'd like to do with all of our clubs. Based around a conversation with the club, it's been passed on to us that the junior and women's programs do have City of Port Phillip postcodes. The National Premier League has less contributions into that, but we will request that from the club and we will try and make that an improvement in our collection of data of all our sporting clubs within the municipality.
Thank you. And one last question from me is, why didn't the officers recommend for the soccer club to become part of the single governance entity of Murphy's Reserve?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the single governance entity was originally formed to help guide the other pavilion on this particular reserve that services one rectangular field, a baseball diamond and 2 ovals. There is an opportunity for us to get better integration between all the clubs there and other community groups and other services like a school that will operate out of this site in the future. That is something we can definitely do. But we do have a agreement with that single governance entity to license the second pavilion on that particular site. So we'd want to make sure that that is still intact, but very happy to facilitate this club being part of an integrated work across the whole site.
Thank you, Mr. Trail. Councillor Crawford.
So there was a question in regards to the car parking, and in the report it refers to there is a previous arrangement. So do local residents not have access to the car park during the week when the grounds are not being, I assume, during the day utilised?
Mr. Trail?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the community should have access to that car park at all times outside of National Premier League fixtures.
Thank you.
And we will ensure better arrangements to make that feel more welcoming for anyone in the community and the digging group to have access to that car park and their community gardens facility.
And can I ask another question, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Crawford.
It's just in regards to the Fisherman's Bend Gymnastics. So it's not that my understanding is that they outgrew the space that we had available and currently do not have any spaces that they would fit into. Is that correct? It's not a matter of that we're not seeking to support them, it's just we currently don't have any facilities that are suitable.
Councillor, Mr. Trail, I can answer that. Yes, that's correct, Councillor Crawford.
Right, so it's just a space issue. Yep, thank you. But obviously, yeah.
Councillor Bond.
Earlier on today, I did a lap of the ground and the fence line, and the only gate that was open was a gate over near the baseball club. I think you've partially answered my question by saying that the car park gate should be open on non-match days. What other gates should be open to allow people to enter this area on non-match days?
Mr. Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's 4 key double gates that should be open. There is the entrance to the car park. There is an entrance to the east in between pitch 1 and 2. And there's the corner intersection that is on Williamstown Road in between pitch 2 and 3. There are 2 other pedestrian gates that should have been allowing access into that area as well. So our expectation was all of those gates, and some of them are double gates to try and create big, wide, inviting openings, are to be open during the day for informal use of those spaces.
And just a follow-up question, whose responsibility is it to open those gates and who holds the keys?
Mr. Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the club has our permission to close that during match fixtures. So my understanding is that the padlocks are their padlocks, not council's.
Another question, should council not have a set of keys? So that in the event the gates are shut, we could go down there ourselves and open them?
Through you, Mayor.
Yes.
I believe that's a sensible suggestion and that we will take that on board. We also note in the report tonight we did make a commitment to look at further reducing the fencing, and based on the feedback that we've received tonight, I propose that we will pursue that vigorously so that we're less reliant on the fencing, on the gates, and more about the actual fencing being removed to the extent that we possibly can.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. That makes it very clear. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much. First question is just wondering what the policy position is on car parking being in parkland. It seems unusual that we have a car park located in a parkland area when, so far as I'm aware, the policy is to reduce car parking across the city.
Mr. Trail?
Through you, Madam Mayor, our preference is not to have car parking on our open spaces, but this is an existing car park that is already in place.
Is there a follow-up question, Councillor Pearl?
Yes, if possible. The council is obviously a large contributor to the club of almost, if you look in the last 2 years since we last made some adjustments of $500,000. I was down at the club this afternoon when, ironically, the gates to the car park were open because there was some training going on there at about 4 o'clock, but yesterday they were definitely shut and locked. I looked around the ground. There's a large amount of sponsorship advertising that's on the ground. There's a small Port Phillip logo over on the scoreboard, and I noticed today on the website the club put up a post yesterday recognising council support, but other grounds obviously have our logos and members are very clear on the level of subsidy that's being provided by ratepayers to the club. And in this case, the ratepayer subsidy to the club is substantial. Is there any acknowledgement by the club in terms of the level of subsidy? Are their members aware of the level of subsidy, and do we get any branding benefits for that?
Mr. Trail?
Through you, Madam Mayor, happy to take that on notice and benchmark that across all sporting clubs.
Through you, Mayor, just again, I think that's a valid point, and it's one that we've talked about as part of this leasing process and entering into new leases where we are providing this significant level of community support, that there is valid recognition, due recognition given to council, and I believe it's part of, if it's not in the council report tonight, it's certainly something that we've discussed and will be pursuing.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Councillor Simic.
Thank you, Mayor. My question was about what fail-safes there are to ensure that people, that the gates are unlocked at inappropriate times, but I think that question's already been answered, so I'm happy to forgo my go.
Okay, thank you. We've got Councillor Bond again.
Yeah, question about the toilets at this facility. I actually used them today. They were unlocked. They were reasonably clean, and the women's toilets were unlocked also. I didn't go into the cleanliness there, but I'll take it they were in the same condition as the men's. Are these public toilets? And if so, if they are going to be public toilets, is there some responsibility on council to maintain them, or does that responsibility be handed over to the club, or will it be handed over to the club as part of the lease? What's the arrangement with those toilets as to whether or not they're public and who's responsible for maintaining them?
I think Mr. Trail answered some of that, but earlier, Mr. Trail, maybe you can comment again, and then we'll go to Ms. Murdoch.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The toilets aren't official public toilets, and I'll let Ms. Murdoch talk about the process going forward, but the Pavilion does have 2 toilets that are got external doors and don't require access to the Pavilion, so it could quite easily be utilised for public toilets for broader community benefit with the right arrangements. I'll let Ms. Murdoch talk about what they might entitle.
Thank you. Ms. Murdoch?
Through you, Mayor, we can certainly look at making the toilets publicly available. There would be a cost to council, considerable cost, my understanding, for the cleaning, ongoing cleaning, to get these up and running as public toilets, but certainly something we can look into.
Thank you very much, Ms. Murdoch. Should councillors wish that to occur, should that be included in this motion, or should that be taken offline and dealt with separately? I'm wondering if we could have some advice on that particular question.
Through you, Mayor. We would need to have it in the resolution this evening to take it out of the current lease agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Murdoch. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much. Just to clarify, if I could on the last point, this is not the first time, the last time around this council is going to consider this, so it could be included at the next round, I would have thought, just to get that clarified. Next time this issue comes to council.
Through you, Mayor, just to clarify, the notice of intention to lease needs to include the key terms that we then enter into a lease with. If there's a key change after that notice period, then we would need to re-notice.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to my original question if I could, Mayor. My question is in relation to, I'll use the word SLA, service level agreement. So in the lease, what are the minimum standards for community engagement, community participation that the club must undertake? I understand that this has been included in other sporting clubs. I haven't got the evidence in front of me, but I think the Borough Football Club had them in there. So what level of minimum requirements is the club required to do to ensure community participation? Sorry, community service as opposed to participation.
Ms. Murdoch or Mr. Trail? I'm not sure which one's going to answer that question. Somebody.
Mr. Trail's best placed to answer that, the service manager.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Mr. Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we expect a lot of community service, so I'd need to sort of take that on notice, the exact things, but and we can make it similar to other examples like the Borough if required.
Just a follow-up question, if we could, Mayor.
Certainly, Councillor Pearl.
Are we saying there's nothing in the current proposed agreement along those lines?
Mr. Trail?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd need to take that on notice.
Okay. Any further questions, councillors? Okay, then we have no further questions. Do we have an officer's recommendation? Do I have a mover for that or something different? I can see Councillor Pearl has put in an wants to raise an alternative motion.
If I could, Madam Mayor, now the officers kindly have most of these changes on file. which I'll read this out. If a councillor wishes to add the item regarding the toilets, then I'd be happy to support that, but I won't read that in this motion that I've got here, just to foreshadow. So I'd like to make the following changes. 3.3 notes that the licence agreement will be the standard seasonal permit template, which requires all clubs to dot point provide council with an operational report covering the operations of the club, including financial performance, participation data, public liability insurance, liquor licences, and any other matters as may be stipulated in council's sports facilities, grounds and club conditions of use booklet, handbook rather. New dot point, use reasonable endeavours to develop and implement environmentally sustainable practices, including landfill and litter within and around the tenancy area. These should be developed in consultation with the Committee of Digging Community Garden. 3.4 notes that the lease for the pavilion will require the Port Melbourne Soccer Club to develop a partnership with the sporting club governing body at J.L. Murphy Reserve and report to council on the community activities provided for the exclusive use of the pavilion. This should include Port Melbourne Soccer Club being considered as an associate member or similar membership or a similar membership level of the body. 3.5 authorises the Chief Executive Officer or Delegate to undertake works to improve access for the public to all grounds, which is to be reported back to council within 12 months from today. 3.6 authorises the Chief Executive Officer or Delegate to develop a long-term usage plan for the use of the site with a formal public consultation process, which is to be reported back to council within 12 months from today. 3.8 has an amendment, and 3.9 resolves to consider future tenancy agreements for the pavilion, car park and pitch 1 at a council meeting for decision.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bond? To second. Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Pearl, please speak to your motion.
Yeah, why don't I just run through all of these points and I'll speak at the end because I'm interested to see what councillors say in their comments also. The reason I've invited feedback from the public on this issue over the past 48 hours is that, as one of the officers said, tonight's motion isn't to formalise the lease, but effectively it becomes quite difficult from here on in to change the lease. So this matter will come back to council for final confirmation, but by then to edit influence the process is very difficult. So my intention and hope is that we've been able to gather some very good intelligence, which we have, and we thank everybody from the club, the Port Melbourne Primary School, a number of the football clubs and other users of Murphy's Reserve, that have provided information and feedback which really has enriched this process and given us a much better platform to move forward as opposed to going through the usual consultation process. So the amendments to 3.3, dot point number 1, will allow data to be provided to council to ensure that we understand what's happening at the site and that we can march with confidence going forward, that we understand what's happening there, and we can also ensure that we're effectively communicating to the community about the uses of the site. The second dot point under 3.3 is really focused around some of the issues that the community garden have brought up around waste and litter being put up against their bordering fence, and it simply asks to ensure that the site is kept clean and tidy, and they work with Dig In to ensure that some of the complaints I've been hearing through community feedback recently are addressed in this process. 3.4 is purely the idea and motive from Councillor Voss, and I'll let her speak to that herself, but I totally agree with this. What this does is it puts the soccer club at the table with its peer users of Murphy Reserve, and that's important for two reasons. The first reason is it brings them part of the overall user community of this really important reserve, Murphy's Reserve. Gives them a seat at the table so they know what's going on, They can build a relationship with the other user clubs in the park, and hopefully that builds friendship and better outcomes. The second point is to start to move more to a basis where the pavilion, as opposed to the grounds, can be utilised potentially by other clubs if they need it for events or training. Synergies can start to be built between those clubs without enforcing that through this lease process here at the moment. But it allows that conversation to at least get started. 3.5 is very, very important based on community feedback that we've all received, particularly in the last 48 hours, but I've been hearing it for several months, if not years, which is why this action, this council took the action back in 2018 to make the amendments to ensure that the open space there was more open. What we now need to do is move to a situation where residents and other clubs understand that the space is open and it's functional to do so. So what this does is ask the officers to work with the club and other users to ensure that the space is actually open and it's easily accessible. Now, this might require some investment and some changes to the structure of the access to the grounds, and that they could be good things. So we might have to lower the fences, we might have to make the access to the fences different, we might have to invest in temporary fencing, but this makes sure that officers go ahead and get that work done. 3.6 is really for council to have a step back and have a look at this facility, particularly the pavilion. The pavilion was built, so far as I'm aware, in 1993 and has had not a lot of work done in the 30 years since. Gone are the days really where we would build an asset for anything in this city without it being multi-use of some description. What I would like to see is a master plan of some description. I hate that word because it's a council acronym, but I've asked for councillors to develop a long-term usage plan where we would look at the site and say, well, what's the best use of this pavilion for the whole community? Do we have to invest some money? Do we have to invest money to upgrade female changing rooms? Can we build a gymnasium on the car park there? There are better uses for this site. So by the time this 3-year lease is up and it comes to the next council, there is a plan, there is a vision, and there are costings around what the options are for this site. The 3.9 is just confirmation that this item should always come to council, and all credit to you councillors. This item wouldn't have come to council unless you all called it in. Originally it was going to be done under delegation, and we all thought as a team, and I think it's a good decision, that given the size and magnitude of the area that's being occupied in very precious Murphy Reserve based on all the forecasts that are happening in Fisherman's Bend, council is the right place to be the final decision making to get the right outcome for our community. So they're the explanation behind each of the amendments here. I'm very eager to hear the comments from councillors, and I'll close. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As everyone who lives in our municipality knows, that council facilities are scarce, and the days of clubs having a facility that is utilised Tuesday, Thursday after work for training and for a couple of afternoons on a weekend solely for one individual club are probably long gone. All of our new facilities, we're trying to have tenant clubs invite the community in. We've seen various examples of this over the year in other parts of our municipality, namely the Port Melbourne Football Club. It was 4 or 5 years ago where we had similar conversations with them, where they we built them a brand new building, and part of that was that the leases that came about once that building opened were required them to engage with the community more than they had been previously, and that appears to be working well so far over the last 3 or 4 years. So the changes we're making here are not something to be feared by the club. We just want to see more community use of these facilities outside of the times that the club is using it. We've done the same thing with many of our life-saving clubs with some of the new buildings and new leases we've offered to those. We've also done the same thing with Eildon and Gasworks over the last 5 years, so it's not just a sporting thing. We've put greater onus on all of our organisations in our city to embrace the community more than they have been previously. So I look forward to this consultation taking place. This is not a decision here tonight on what the lease will be. This is an opportunity for both the club and various other members of the community to make submissions to us on what they feel about this proposal, and this will come back to us on another couple of occasions before a final decision is eventually made by council. I was down there today. I think they're great facilities the club has got. I think it's great change rooms. The pitch was in really good condition, so they're clearly well looked after by council and the clubs jointly. But I just look forward to seeing what we can do to get greater use from this facilities by other groups and the general public with all that open space down there that should be available during the week when the club's not is. So by all means, get in touch with us as councillors. Invite us down if you want us to come and have a look at the facilities. If you want to speak to us, I'm more than happy to come down and have a look. I was down there today, but if someone from the club wants to invite us down, we'll certainly go down and hear what you have to say, and you can show us around and show us what it is you do before we make this decision in a month or two's time.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Simic, you have a clarifying question.
Yes, I'm just trying to understand the revised motion. Just a question for the officers. So there's revised wording to say to develop a long-term usage plan, improve access for the public to all the grounds, which is to be reported back to council within 12 months. I just want to understand from officers, given the lease agreement, what latitude council has to actually put these improvements in place and also suggest further improvements at that 12-month mark.
Mr. Carroll?
Through you, Mayor. We have fairly significant latitude to do that. So I think the key thing will be councillor support in the further negotiations that we need to undertake. But there is an intent to further reduce the fencing while meeting some of the requirements for the club, especially on pitch 1. But we are committed to reducing the fencing and ensuring greater accessibility. So I'm comfortable that we can meet the intent of those parts of this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Now, I've put myself in the queue. I would like to make an amendment to Councillor Pearl's alt motion. And that amendment is to instruct officers to include in the lease the requirement for the toilets to be made reasonably available to the public at the cost of the club. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Crawford? Thank you. I'll just briefly speak to that amendment. Councillors, we heard loud and clear from a number of people tonight and the significant feedback that we've had online, that we need to make the toilets available for members of the community, for dig-in, for anyone up that end of the grounds. We know that there's going to be significant increase in the numbers of people in Fisherman's Bend in particular, so it'll be well worth the while in making them available. We've heard things like the women's toilets have full of storage things, and then we've heard tonight from Councillor Bond that he actually went into the men's and it was fine, didn't go into the women's, so we're not quite sure about that, but they were open. But I do think, councillors, this is a very good amendment to make to Councillor Bond's motion. And I've been asked to put that in as 3.10 as the number. Yes. So thank you very much. I think it's just simple. That's all we want, is to have these toilets available to the public. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the amendment? Would anyone else like to speak to the amendment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe 3.10 should say instructs officers rather than to instruct officers, given that it starts with that council.
Happy with that? Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl, is it? Bond?
Yeah, look, I will support this amendment. I'm just a little concerned about the impost this is going to have on the club. I'll support it at this stage, but it is something we probably could remove at the next opportunity if it wasn't going to work for the club. But I'll certainly endeavour to have some conversation with the club and find out what the impost or ramifications are going to be of this. If there's none, fine, we can keep it in there, but I'd love to hear from them before we 100% commit to this. So I'll support it now, but just a little, I want to hear more about what impact this will have on the club.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Would anyone else like to speak? Then I'll put that motion, that amendment, and we're just voting on the amendment regarding the toilets at this particular point in time. I'll remind councillors, so I'm going to put that under division and call upon each councillor for their vote. Councillor Voss, for. Councillor Baxter?
For.
Councillor Bond?
For.
Councillor Brand?
For.
Councillor Copsey?
For.
Councillor Crawford?
For.
Councillor Gross?
For.
Councillor Pearl?
In favour.
Councillor Simic?
For.
Thank you. That amendment is unanimously carried and now forms part of the substantial motion. So just to remind everyone, we've had Councillor Pearl and Councillor Bond speak to the substantial motion. Would anyone else like to speak to the substantial motion? I will also speak to the substantial motion, and I'd just like to thank Councillor Pearl for putting this up, certainly after getting a lot of comments and having a lot of conversations with people in the community. And I'd just like to thank the community in particular for getting in touch and helping to contribute to our decision-making process tonight. As we know, we've heard from a lot of people and we can see and hear the passion in everyone's voices. People love their sport and they certainly love their club, which absolutely warms the cockles of my heart. I think community, local benefit and sharing and collaboration, and of course sport, are really making up what I think are the attributes around making this decision the right one. Our responsibility is to think of the whole community. We need to make a decision in the best interests of the whole community. So there are two things which are incorporated in this motion from Councillor Pearl that I'm really keen to emphasise. The first one is for the grounds in particular to be open to everyone. I don't want to take away the ability for the club to raise money from the gate takings, but it is time for privatisation of our public space to stop. I have the same concerns about North Port Oval and other public places in our municipality, which this council and previous councils have been keen to remove fences and really allow access all year round. There has to be a way to ring fence an area on days and times for special events so that clubs can raise money. But at other times, it needs to be non-exclusive, and we certainly understand that. I know that we can work on this together. I know it'll be difficult, but our community is changing at such a rapid rate, we need to make sure that the social and the physical infrastructure keeps pace. The second key issue is collaboration, in particular collaboration with other clubs in the reserve. And I know the Sharks have been in touch and many meetings with the other members of the clubs. But the responsibility is there for the club to become, I think, a formal member of the Murphy's Reserve governance. The AFL groups, the Colts, Juniors, Seniors, Cricket and the Baseball, Middle Park Soccer, they can all work together for the benefit of the reserve and the community, and I think the Sharks should sign up to that as well. This single governance body will hopefully include other parks users, as we've heard earlier, like the school, and hopefully dig in as well. Everyone should have a say in the ongoing workings and how JL Murphy works as a whole. I would like to challenge the Sharks, the committee, The members, the players and the families, like we've challenged the Colts and others, have been challenged to look to the future and to embrace it. These are really small changes actually, but will have wide impact for the whole community. This is not about this is about inclusion and not exclusion. Let's work on this together for the benefit of everyone. Thank you. Councillor Simic, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I echo a lot of those words that have just been said. Since I've been on council, I've always supported our open spaces, community spaces being open to the community as much as possible. And tonight it is no difference. I think that the wording of the amended motion makes a lot of sense. I am confident, having heard from officers, that there will be enough latitude to take further steps to ensure that if things aren't going well in terms of community being able to access the grounds, that council will be able to work in the area to take further steps to resolve those issues. I think community access is so incredibly important. We're one of the densest municipalities in Victoria, and we have to ensure that people have space to recreate. It's important for their mental health, for their well-being, and certainly something that I deeply support. So I think the steps that we're taking tonight are moving us very much in a positive direction. I'm very supportive. Thank you, Councillor Pearl and Councillor Voss, for working collaboratively with all the councillors to recommend these words. I've had many phone calls over the last 48 hours in particular with people who are concerned, particularly around community access. And I hope that those concerns have somewhat been alleviated by the proposed motion which we're discussing tonight. And I hope all councillors will support.
Thank you, Councillor Simic. Would anyone else like to speak to the substantive motion? Councillor Brand?
Yes, I just want to support the very well-spoken words of Councillor Voss and everybody else who has contributed to this now rather large motion, putting a lot of things on the agenda for further discussion, which is the key point at this point of the process. And by the end of it, I think we'll probably end up with a tidier package. But I think that's been a very, very good process. And I want to thank everybody that's been involved with it. Several councillors contributing parts of it, and many, many members of the community contributing information, intelligence, and argument. And thank you very much. It's quite impressive, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Then there are no more councillors wishing to speak. Then Councillor Pearl, would you like to close?
Thanks, Mayor. This is a good outcome, what we're seeing here this evening, and it almost seems crazy now that this decision was originally going to be made under delegation. And we're so lucky that we live in 2020 where we can go out to our community in 48 hours and get 438 comments of feedback on a proposal coming to the council meeting, and we get those wonderful people coming to the council meeting virtually talking to us this evening. Historically, that wouldn't have happened, and frankly, this lease and license arrangements wouldn't have delivered the outcome that hopefully the community will get when this final document is signed. There's no doubting that soccer and rugby infrastructure, in particular for females, but also males in our city, is underrepresented. But we need to work out better ways of opening the fences, not closing the fences to all sports. We're all big supporters of soccer, and we're thrilled with the recent news with the Female World Cup. Council's investment to the club is substantial, as we're hearing. It's almost $250,000 a year, let alone, not to mention the size of the site that's actually being used and not including capital works. That's something that should be hugely valued by the club, its players, its coaches and its members. I don't feel that relationship between councillors, council, community groups and the club is as tight as it could be, and hopefully this process, as Councillor Voss says, puts the club on a pathway to bridge that gap over the coming months and years. There's an opportunity with this site that we've never seen before, I think, with so many things coming together. So women's sport is obviously increasing, but this site is not fit for it. And albeit the club is putting a large emphasis on the two teams, it's still a large underrepresentation. Women should have more access to those existing sites, and we should give them more sites and facilities to get access to. With the World Cup coming to town, it's going to need training facilities. There might be an opportunity to co-invest with the state and federal government, etc. So now is the good time to have the vision piece starting to be developed by council officers with the club and the community. It'll be ready by the time the investment is ready, I suspect. One thing I would say is I've never seen a situation where so many people come from the community who are actually referenced in the paper meant to be supporting the club to then speak against the club. That's something that shouldn't occur, and it also indicates to me that we probably haven't vetted out some of the claims that have been made and some of the documentation. I think the club can easily fix this, particularly the relationship with some of the groups that they mention, with the help of council, etc. But it is important that any lease going forward has very clear SLAs attached to it. So by the time, in terms of community engagement, community outreach, community service, so by the time the next lease renewal comes through, it's really clear what the club's committed to and what they've achieved. And there's a minimum benchmark there that helps them keep themselves accountable, and also that the council can justify the costs that they're subsidising the club by, and also the space that we're providing. It's very, very important. Women's sport, particularly the gymnasium, the Fisherman's Bend Gymnastics, is an amazing club producing a large amount of revenue to fund themselves in what is a very large shed that, over a rent bill of well over $100,000, and they're having to sustain themselves, servicing close to 1,000 people. It highlights the inequality across clubs across the whole city, and it's something we need to get to terms with. And even the clubs in Murphy's Reserve don't know each other's deals that they all have. I doubt soccer clubs know what the Colts have, and probably, well, not vice versa, because we're in the public domain at the moment. But we need to be more transparent around how we're subsidising clubs, how we're servicing clubs, and what the terms and terms of the deals are, so everybody understands. But there's certainly the Fisherman's Bend Gymnastics Club is getting not enough support from council at the moment, and it goes to the underinvestment in women's sport. It's not good enough for council just to build female toilets and changing facilities, and I'm foreshadowing a motion which I've talked to councillors before in the past that I will bring probably to the next council meeting. It's not good enough just to provide the facilities. We need to provide the equal airtime on field. I've had conversations with female sports teams in our city where they're getting very poor hours for use of primary fields or side fields, and being pushed aside by male teams, etc. So the infrastructure is one thing that we obviously need to invest in, but we also need access to the sites, and it's no different for this club here. We shouldn't have a situation where female teams can't be built up. That shouldn't be at the expense of male teams. We all need to get bigger together, obviously, but there's room to improve from council and also with this club. Car parking, as I said before, I don't think is appropriate on public land of this site, but what a huge opportunity there is there to develop that for the future, either as open space or as an improved pavilion venue or a shared venue for our community, and perhaps even a very large-scale gymnastics facility would be fantastic there. To Oggie's point before, we own and control many of the assets and the fences, etc., so council can easily manipulate this area to get a much better community outcome. So in summary, I think you should all be really proud of this decision this evening. Again, this was a decision that was going to be made under delegation, which we as a team brought together. This is the sort of example where this council works best together. And we're delivering a great outcome, I think, for all in terms of this club down the track, the other clubs in Murphy Reserve, and the community as a whole. And 5 or 10 years down the track, this small little thing we've done with this lease, I think will change the future of the whole of Murphy's Reserve for the better. So, councillors, thank you for those who have spoken out in support this evening. Thank you for the hundreds of messages I've got in the past 48 hours. A number of you probably questioned my tactics and motives around the use of my photography. I take your feedback, but I'm very, very grateful for the hundreds of messages that you sent me. Those messages have been heard loud and clear, and I think we're getting a much better outcome here this evening because of your input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. So now I'll put the motion under division and I call upon each councillor's vote. First up is me, Councillor Voss, 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. So, item 15, notices of motion, and councillors, we don't have any notices of motion tonight. 16 is reports by councillor delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports tonight? No, not seeing any reports tonight. Okay. Then I'll go to item 17, which is urgent business. So, councillors, we have one item of urgent business in relation to 134 to 142 Ferrars Street, South Melbourne, and I'll ask Ms Rosick to provide advice on why this item is before council this evening. Thank you, Ms Rosick.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This item is before council as urgent business because council has received the notice of decision related to this planning matter on the 30th of June, and council has until the deadline of the 22nd of July to consider whether it wishes to lodge an application for review at VCAT. And the next planning committee meeting is scheduled on that day, so we've brought the matter forward to council. The notice of decision concerns the planning application that was, or the amendment that was presented to council on the 24th of June, and the notice of decision does not fully reflect what was endorsed by council to be provided to the Minister in relation to this planning application.
Thank you, Ms Rosick. So I'm going to need a mover and a seconder for council to accept the item of urgent business. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Moving Councillor Copsey and Councillor Baxter to second. Thank you. I'll now put that motion. And again, under division, Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
4.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Thank you.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. That motion is carried, and now we will consider an item of urgent business. So 17.1, 134 to 142 Ferrars Street, South Melbourne. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this item? Councillor Crawford.
I would like to know, Ms Rosick, you said it was going to VCAT in a week or two. If we were to challenge at VCAT, and well, I guess either way, does it delay the project by much? Is it like, I guess that's my major concern, will it cause a great delay?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to clarify, council needs to make a decision whether it wants to lodge a review with VCAT. I'll invite the Manager of Planning to provide further detail about the process. Mr George Borg.
Thank you, Mr Borg.
Thank you, Ms Rosick, and through you, Madam Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Crawford. Yes, there will be a delay if council lodges the application for review with VCAT. However, this is a one condition matter and it's probably localised, so it could be done through a quick hearing process. There's some fast hearings that are available. Full hearings aren't available until around April next year. So as a fast track process, this could be done. An option that's also available is if we do lodge an application for review, the Minister has the power to call the matter in, and that could also speed up the process in terms of how the decision's made in relation to this application.
May I ask a follow-up question, Mayor?
Certainly, Councillor Crawford.
Mr. Borg, so when you say a fast track, do we have any kind of vague time frame? Is that like 2 months' time? Is that within a couple of weeks?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Crawford. Yes, it's around 6 to 8 weeks at the moment for a fast track.
Thank you, Mr. Borg. I also have a question in relation to the issue around diluting the intent of Council's decision a few weeks ago. Can you speak to that point in your report that mentions that? I'm just trying to find it at the moment. About how does this decision, notice of motion, dilute the response in terms of affordable housing?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the question. When the permit was originally issued, that went through a VCAT process. We put the condition on that we wanted 6% of the 107 dwellings that was part of this development. That equated to 6 dwellings that we provided through a housing authority in perpetuity for affordable housing. That was it. And that was what was accepted. It was agreed to by the applicants, signed off by all parties, became a permit condition. What the applicant has asked for now and what has been included in the notice of decision by the department is a third option. If I take it to 2.5 of the report, there's a third option which we didn't support. The third option, we supported the first option, option 1, transfer of the dwellings to a registered housing agency, and 2, leasing of the dwellings as affordable housing. The third option that's coming is leasing of the dwellings as affordable housing to eligible persons by the owner to the satisfaction of the responsible authority, which is the Minister in this case, for a period of not less than 20 years. Now, that time period is lower than what we believe to be in perpetuity, and we have that benchmark as being around 30 years. So it could, and it also doesn't allow for the low income residents as what was the initial condition was approved for. This can allow a more moderate income resident to also go in there for a period less than the 30 years that we already had achieved through the previous conditions.
Okay, thank you. And a further question, Mr. Borg, in relation, we made the decision at the last council meeting on this item really in good faith because there had been a negotiated outcome which we thought everyone was in support of, and now that's been more or less discarded. You know, is this usual? If everyone agrees something that you know, it's then overturned. Can you speak to, you know, perhaps if we'd known this at the time, would we have agreed this? I mean, I know I wouldn't have, but just sort of, would you mind speaking to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you as the Chair. Certainly would never have consented to this condition at the VCAT hearing, first off. So that's pretty clear. In terms of what we would have accepted, we would have preferred the original condition remain. There is, as councils are aware, the opportunity for a Section 72 amendment, which allows the consideration of certain aspects. So we do need to deal with that aspect, and we need to deal with the changes that are proposed. So we think at the last Planning Committee meeting of the 24th, we came up with a reasonable compromise. And we had those discussions, and Council certainly supported those compromises. We highlighted the specific changes to the Minister, yet again, we're in the hands of the department, and the department made a different decision. So we don't think it stands up against the previous approval of VCAT, and so we, as officers, are recommending that we take the matter back to VCAT on this specific condition, and certainly look at removing that condition and also consider other options that are available to us.
Thank you. And I guess one further question, Mr. Borg, about precedents. We're at a really tricky time at the moment with in relation to housing, full stop, and then also with what we're trying to do in Fisherman's Bend. If we didn't take this and appeal it, what do you think? And I know this is difficult, but might be the outcome. Would it set a precedent, potentially set a precedent that we may get a worse outcome for all future applications?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Mayor, it is difficult to answer because each application must be dealt with on its individual merits and individual circumstances. However, what we have seen is when that first condition went through, where we achieved the 6%, that seemed to have raised some concerns with the development industry, and they've worked really hard in terms of, trying to come up with different options that are available. Yet we think if we accept the condition as it is, it's likely that other applicants would ask for something similar.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Borg. Any further questions, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Copsey to move and Councillor Baxter to second. Sorry, no, I'm reading something. Yes, Councillor Copsey to move and Councillor Crawford to second. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll just reserve. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, although I'm not keen on delays, I think that this is a time to hold the ground, hold the line on this one. We know that one of the key issues in our municipality is across the whole of Melbourne is lack of affordable, social, public, accessible housing, and Fisherman's Bend is the only current opportunity where anything applies to get developers to contribute to more affordable housing in our municipality. So I think it is important to test this, to hold the line and say, no, the agreement we came to under VCAT is we want to stick with that original. Yep, so I am very much in support of taking this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Brand, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'm very much in favour of it as well. I'm always for flexibility and listening to the needs and the desires of developers in certain situations and maybe changing things. But I think it's really important that we actually establish what the norm is. And there's no reason that I know of that this shouldn't be established as the norm. We went through the process with the applicants before and I think worked out a really good position. So I think it's very, very important to actually not just slip back on it, but to actually go back to the arbiter and say this really does need to stand up. Is there any reason for it that it shouldn't stand up? It needs to be established as the norm and not an extreme position that should always be watered down. Even though I certainly agree with there should always be the opportunity to modify it in certain circumstances, but I just think it's really important to establish this as the norm, and we should go and fight for it where we can, or take it to the minister who might call it in if that's the way that they want to do it. It needs to be put there as a position that needs to be upheld. It's a long battle that's been fought at Fisherman's Bend, and it really does need to be established, and this is a chance of doing it for the better of the giant housing shortage that this whole state is facing. Good.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not going to support this because I just don't think it has any credible means of being able to get up the thing we're relying on is discretionary. So if you want to spend $30,000 or $40,000 and you think that's a worthwhile investment, and you think you're going to move the ground on affordable housing regulation in Fisherman's Bend by creating a precedent at VCAT, I think it's very, very unlikely. You would be better off putting those resources into lobbying the state government to actually get structural change to achieve what you're seeking to. Because I really think the chances of changing the decision are low. You are spending a sizable amount of ratepayer money that could be better deployed to achieve an outcome which you're trying to achieve. So I don't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
Yes, similar to Councillor Pearl, I won't be supporting this either because I think our chances of success are minimal to non-existent, and this would just be wasting ratepayers' money on a VCAT appeal that is not going to be successful. So I won't be supporting this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Then I'll also speak to this motion. Council defends their decisions all the time in VCAT, and this is nothing different. This is a long game. Every time we have something come to us, it keeps creeping back in terms of our aspirations for what we want to see Fisherman's Bend be, and the diversity in housing in particular. It's very important that Council appeals this position. And I think I agree, well, absolutely I agree that with the previous councillors speaking on this, that we hold our ground. It's really critical to get the right outcome here. The three reasons that have been given are quite compelling. They're small, but they're so important to the outcome. You know, and number one is that the issue that this decision that's been made dilutes the intent of Council's unanimous decision a few weeks ago. All of you voted for this unanimously, and now you don't care, some of you. So it's really, really important, I think, that we step up to the plate here. Two, it was agreed and negotiated in good faith by all the parties. And we were concerned at the time that they were potentially using the Section 72 to sort of wiggle out of some things. And, you know, and now it looks like that may have come to fruition. So we really need to make sure that their original position and agreement is upheld. And three, we need to be firm on the length of time that the affordability remains in place. There is an incredibly dire need throughout the whole of Australia, whole of Victoria, and certainly Melbourne and our municipality for more affordable housing. And this is our biggest chance to get it, and it's absolutely slipping through our fingers. And we need to stand up and make sure we defend our decision, our unanimous decision that we made only a couple of weeks ago, and make sure that this is a long game and that we're in it. So I'll put back to Councillor Copsey if you would like to close.
Thank you, Mayor. You've spoken very well. Said just about everything I would want to, so I endorse those comments. And I think it's particularly important. We know that we have some of the lowest levels of affordable housing availability in the state and the country. It's an ongoing problem that this council and councils before it have striven to address. We really need the assistance of the state, essentially, in making sure that we have planning mechanisms that secure affordable housing for all Victorians. I'm very, very proud of the practical and flexible way that officers have worked to come up with an agreed position that I absolutely agree needs to be defended. And I think that it's really important, as you said, that we draw a line in the sand. The council here is sophisticated. Our planners are sophisticated in terms of dealing and working with applicants and the developer community, and we need them to come to the table and help us produce good outcomes for the community and houses that people actually want to live in and communities that people want to live in. That's what we're here to deliver through good planning decisions for our community. So very pleased that the officers were able to turn this around tonight so that we can take that position and defend it rigorously. All the best in doing that and advancing it. You'll, I hope, have council's full support behind you tonight, or at least strong majority support. And just to note that it is really important, particularly as relates to Fisherman's Bend, where we're talking about a community, a large portion of which is yet to arrive, that council be the voice for that community. It's absolutely essential that through our planning decisions we create livable communities and that we pull our bit as council to ensure that everybody has a safe and secure place to call home, because it is a human right. So all the best to the officers in delivering a good outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. Now I'll put that motion again under division. Councillor Bond.
Again.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
Against.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
That motion is carried. Thank you. Now, the last item on the agenda tonight is confidential matters. In councillors, we have two confidential matters tonight, being 18.1, which is the sale of 8 York Street, St Kilda West, the reserve price, and 18.2, which is a commercial property matter. I now call on a council to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public to consider this confidential item. Councillor Crawford to move and Councillor Gross to second. I'll now put that motion under division. Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey. Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
For.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
That motion's carried. So councillors, we'll now conclude the open part of this meeting in Webex and we'll move to Councillor Microsoft Teams to consider the confidential item. I advise members of the public that there are no further open items to be discussed. And this will be the conclusion of the public meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight.